so that we can remember to put that out there for the rest of the people that can't attend with us tonight. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you that video about lotion making. And then at the end of the class, we'll talk about some spring foraging herbs. So I'm going to share my screen, all kinds of stuff. Well, so just in case, for those of you who are from other places in the world, we're not quite to foraging here yet. This was actually just 1 week ago, a short distance north of here at a friend's house. And we have probably 5 feet of snow on the ground, and it was still snowing. So we're not quite as green and happy as maybe some of you are down in Michigan and Florida. So that's what we're working with. And now we're going to get to the videos. So this is my YouTube channel. I don't have very much on here, but I have a few things. And we're going to start right here. This link will be shareable. This video will be publicly available after tonight's class, like starting tomorrow. So you can just go in and type in my name and YouTube, and you could be able to get at the few things that I have on here. So this will be on there as well. Let's see. We'll start it from the very beginning and make it big.
Stacy, I'm sorry to interrupt. Does anyone else have or not have audio? I'm not hearing anything.
We don't have audio. If you go into settings when you do a screen share, there's an option like a checkbox for optimize for video sharing that you should see. And that's the way that you can get to it.
All right. So tell me that.
So you might have to
unshare. Jenna, you're muted. Can you tell me again?
Yeah, so if you unshare and then click screen share again, you should see a box with an option that tells you to optimize for screen sharing, I think is what it says.
Share sound, there's one. Optimize for video clip. We'll try them both.
Yeah, Jana, way to go. I love the problem solving at its finest.
Well, the first part just said, don't wear your best shirt. So beekeeper will, did that work?
Preserve the honey.
Yes, it did.
The wax that she makes in ice cube trays, and that, or in muffin tins. And that's really nice because then you get an easier way to measure it out. And like an ice cube is usually about an ounce. So that works really nice. So right now what we're measuring is 1 ounce of beeswax. We have most of our oil strained and ready to go, but we had one more herb that we needed to add into this concoction. And what we have in here is Japanese knotweed root that has been infusing for several days. And we're just gonna, making small batches of oil is a good idea if you're just making things for yourself or for sharing with your family, because it has less of a chance of going off in your cupboard. And using an oil that has a high vitamin E content, that's why I use grapeseed oil for mine. It has a longer shelf life. I also use grapeseed oil because it has less of a strong odor. It's kind of a neutral smell. And most people, I've not run into anybody that has an allergy with grapeseed oil yet. So it's been a really good base for me. So we strain the oil and we put it in a jar, and just as a reminder, you want to always put your name of what you've got in your jar and the date on both the jar and the lid, because if you're doing a bunch of stuff and you're taking lids off on the counter, and you don't want to get things mixed up or cross-contaminate anything, so you want to make sure you have your lids marked as well, and particularly the date and any of the ingredients that are in there. And if you were doing something like a tincture, you would want to make sure you write down the parts that you put in if you're doing a very specific measure. So heat up the wax and melt it. So here we go. And you want to melt the wax on a pretty low temperature so you don't burn it. So this takes a little bit of time. And again, our ratio here is it's usually about my ratio anyways, what I found works for me for salves or lotions is 1 ounce of wax to 1 cup of oil. And that would be the base for your salve. But since we're going to turn it into lotion, then we use, for a 1 cup of oil recipe, we're going to use 10 ounces of distilled water. And I'm heating that up right now to get it to kind of room temperature. It's a little bit warmer than tepid. I've never been able to get a good thermometer read to say it's exactly this temperature for the water, and that's because it changes through the seasons. Like in the winter time, I find, I don't know if it has to do with humidity or what, but the water needs to be a little bit warmer. And in the summertime, it actually needs to be a little bit colder. And there's ways to do damage control. If you get your water too hot, or your lotion doesn't want to fluff up because the oil's too warm or something like that, you can always take your mixture, and once you get it kind of blended, when we get to that part, I'll show you, you can put it in the freezer for a little while, or if you live here, you can stick it outside and let it cool off, and then blend it some more, and then it'll incorporate better and fluff up. To wait until your wax is all the way melted. You can go ahead and then dump your oil in when it's mostly there, because it's going to get thick again when you put the cold oil into the warm wax, and then you have to just let that get warm and melted until it's completely liquid. You might remember that we did this when we made our salve last class. So this is the first step. And once this gets to be completely liquid, we could call this done and put it into small tins, and then we'd have a nice little balm. That's how easy that is to do. So we're just gonna let that melt down. You want to make sure again that you have designated supplies and tools to make your herbal products. You don't want to use the same spatulas that you're using to make spaghetti or things like that. And keep everything separated. I keep a whole cupboard under here of nothing but my oils, the things that I need to make oils or strain things. This is just the herb supply cupboard, and none of that stuff gets used in the cooking kitchen. So and that's perfect. See, it's a little bit cool. So here we have our 10 ounces of distilled water. want to use distilled water because there's no chance of impurities in there, and it's going to keep your shelf life of your product a little bit longer. So this is the way I do it. A lot of people will put the oil in, put the water into the oil. I have found for me, and with this immersion blender, this is a great tool for making lotion, that I like to put the water in the bowl first. And I also dump it out of the pan that's hot, because that definitely can impact the way that it emulsifies together, and sometimes that hot pan really interferes with it becoming a nice fluffy mixture. So the other thing you're going to want to have when you're making lotions or salves is a bunch of paper towels, and this is probably the hardest part, and if you're really careful about the environment, but you don't want to be rinsing wax and solidified lotion and things like that down your drain repeatedly, and using cloth rags. They get really rancid and stinky, and they can gum up your washing machine. So if you're not going to use rags that you're just going to immediately, cut up and put into the compost, which some people do, then this is probably the most effective way to do it. And you can find recycled paper towels, and that helps a little bit. So I'm going to put I'm just going to turn this off for right now. I'm going to put the blender in and start the water going before I dump. Right away, see it emulsifying. And just take 2 to 4 minutes, depending on the size of your batch. Of wrecking your clothes if you don't have an old t-shirt on. The lotion does splatter. Let's check it out. Nice and smooth, no lumps. There you go. There's your lotion. And now at this point, depending what I'm making, a lot of, I might go back in and once I scrape the bottom, just like making a mayo or something like that, you want to make sure it's all incorporated. This is where you could put in your essential oils if you wanted a fragrance. Because the herbs in this blend, particularly the chaparral, are strong smelling. I like to use lavender in this one to kind of help make it a nicer, this one's almost empty, so I'm going to take the top out. You gotta be careful when you do it this way, because you can put too much in there. Sometimes I'll use a dropper, like a tincture dropper, just to make sure I don't get too much. But this is all to preference. I make my lotions and things really lightly scented, because that's probably about 20 drops right there. Just because a lot of people don't like a heavy scent, and there's a lot of facilities out there, or if you're wearing scents and things like in the hospital where I used to work, where that's really not something that they endorse. So they just keep things lightly scented or unscented. So, and what do you think? All right, so now we're just gonna go ahead and put it right into the tins. And as this cools off, it'll just firm up a little bit. And as you can tell, I'm not a perfect aim every time, so just to know that you might have to go back and clean up the tops of your jars a little bit, which is okay. Once this cools off a little bit, it's going to wipe off the edge really easily, and you're going to be able to just put it right back in there so you don't lose any. You could get pretty particular, and you could, you know, weigh out your containers and make them all exactly, you know, equal by weight and not by volume. But depending on what you're going to do with it, I have not ever found that too necessary. So it's pretty easy to just go back and stick it in there. Of course, you know, we've washed our hands thoroughly before we've started this project, so it's all safe. You want to make sure that you get that off the edge, and that you're what you're touching around the outside, you know, you don't have oily hands, because then that will keep your labels from sticking well. So if you do get oil on the outside of your container, whether you're making a salve or a lotion, once you get the lid on, go around with a little alcohol swab and just wipe it down, and then your labels will stick just fine. So, all right, so our first batch is done. See, there's oil on there, so now I'm going to stick that one off to the side so that I can remember to wipe that one down before I try and put a label on it. Alright, so cleaning up, you want to make sure that everything gets really wiped down. And so this is a good time, especially like in the summer when people have more bare skin on their bodies available, to say, anybody need some lotion? And come and get it, especially when we're making things like for sore muscles or things like that. Then you can find a way to use this without feeling like you're wasting the last little bits. But I give everything a really good wipe down first with the paper towels, and then we go with really, really hot water to get everything fully cleaned up and sterilized. So try and reuse as much of the paper towels as I can until they're just too saturated. Don't push the wrong button. Sometimes the power button is the one you want to go to when you're holding this up in the air. That takes a little bit longer to clean up. You don't want someone that might be allergic to one of your herb blends. If you're making something, you don't want anything left over when you're cleaning things up. You get as much off as you can. before you put it into the water. So here we are just doing some more cleanup, and just a kind of a tip, if you do get one of these immersion blenders, stuff gets stuck where it spins around down in here. So using a toothbrush works really good to get that extra layer that gets caught down in there out of there. So it's nice, really nice and clean. We have one more important step to make before our medicine from the herbs can be fully activated in our product, in our lotion that we made today, and that's to give the mark, which is the herbs that have been used and strained, back to the earth. So we're just walking out here to the compost bin, and we're just gonna put that in there so that we can be good stewards to the earth. And now our remedy is fully potentized, and that's that. So there you go. Do we have any questions? I see someone with a hand up.
I think that might have been when we were having audio issues. But unless I'm wrong, Trish, you can go ahead and unmute and ask your question. Debbie wanted to know, in the meantime, what would be a good herb to add to relieve itching?
What kind of itching? Is it like patchy, rashy eczema, or is it more of a dermatitis kind of thing? Is the skin weeping? Is it dry? Is it, those are the kinds of things, if you were part of the what's the tissue state look like class. So you want to figure out if you need to do some moistening, or if you need to do some drying up, or if you need to do something that's more antibacterial or antiviral. So it's patchy, red, and irritated. So you'd probably want to put something cooling and moistening on there. Things like chickweed work really well. If there's something that's like a debris or something like mosquito bite poison or something like that, plantain works really great in a salve to help draw out any kind of something that might be an irritant. You could use the thing that I use mostly for like eczema and psoriasis is a blend of calendula, chamomile, mint, and that's infused into the oil. And then I use tea tree and lavender essential oil to help with that antimicrobial piece. And that really does the trick for that kind of skin. So there's lots of different herbs that would work for soothing. Marshmallow root would be a good one that you could use. Yeah, lots of different things. You got to take a look at what's going on and try and figure out how to balance that tissue state out.
All right, any other questions while we're taking this little break? You can either unmute or you can put.
Jennifer, you just muted yourself.
What can I say? I'm just mute happy. Okay, if we don't have any other further questions, we can move on to the next video.
Okay, so actually, it's not really a video per se. Let's see, what are we doing here? I wanted to talk about some spring herbs. Let's see, where did I put that? Let me think. Here it is. So we're going to talk about something that, even though the snow is still quite deep around my house, that some things are starting to come into availability. And one of the things that I forage for in the springtime is the Balm of Gilead. And this is a popple balsam, popple bud. And so this grows very much around most of the upper Midwest and across the North America continent. I don't know that it grows down in the southern states as much, but they have cottonwoods down there that are similar. And this is something that, whoops, let's see, that's not what I want to do. I want to go to this. This is this is a great, if you just go ahead and put in Balm of Gilead tree, you're going to get all kinds of images. And what I wanted to show you here is the different stages of the buds. So you saw that nice drippy bud with the resin coming out, and that's what we want to collect. And so before we get there, they're very dry and tight like this.
Stacy?
Yes?
Are you sharing your screen? Because I'm just seeing you.
Oh, well, let me see. Oh, the button, that always helps.
Perfect. That's where we were missing.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so did you hear me say that did you see the picture with the sappy bud? Let's see if I can find one in here. So this is what the buds look like when they are just coming out. And this is called the Populus falciferus, or cipera. Okay, and this is called the quaking aspen. And it's really common up in where we live and around here. So what I wanted to show you is that they have two different kinds of calyxes. And so you might have seen these if you've been up in the Midwest in the woods. And this is a male calyx, the red one, right here. And the female is more white. And they actually grow on two different trees. So we have male and female species or versions of this. And when they get together and magic happens, this is what the fertilized seed pod looks like. You can see how it was all little and fuzzy like that. And now these have been pollinated or made, and then they tighten up and they make these little seed pods. So before this happens, we want to get at these little juicy buds. Now I'm going to see if I can find my picture again for you and share it properly. There it is. Look at how juicy that gets. And that's what we want to, that's what we're gathering. If you've gathered popple buds before, balsam poplar buds or cottonwood buds, put a thumbs up or something in the chat so we can see how many people are familiar with this. So this is actually a stolen name, not a stolen name, a transferred name to something that grows in North America. The actual genuine Balm of Gilead is a tree that grows over in Arabia, in Jerusalem, and it's the Balm of Gilead that they talk about in the Bible. And it's a whole different tree. It's called Comnifera gileadensis, and it looks completely different. It's a small, more shrubby looking bush with small little leaves. And that was kind of the sacred herb that is talked about in the Bible, and it was used in over in that country. At some point in the history of Western herbalism, the name got transferred over, and it's not really clear, about the time that that was happening, but in about 1931, Maud Grieve, or Margaret Grieve, she's an author that you may have heard of. She's got her book called The Modern Herbal, has noted that our poplar trees have taken on that name here in our country. So they have similar properties, but I think that the one that is the sacred herb from the Bible probably has several different uses than what we use poplar resin for here in the Midwest and in North America. And when you're gathering these buds, it's really sticky, and your fingers are just going to get like totally. It's like pine sap. They're going to get kind of glued together. Lots of people will wear like Rubbermaid gloves, like the kind you do dishes with in the sink when they're picking the buds, because they just don't like to get that on their hands. I don't mind it. You want to bring your jar of what you're going to put the buds in. You're going to infuse them into oil. That's how we preserve these. And you're going to make this wonderful medicinal oil that you can use internally for things like sore throats and laryngitis and coughs and bronchitis. It's bitter, it's warming, it's soothing to like sore muscles and joint conditions. It's also really antimicrobial, and it's used as a wound healer and a skin salve in that way. But the most amazing thing about it is the way that it smells. So any of you that have picked it, because I'm not actually seeing the chat, you can attest to that glorious smell that it gives off. And it's such a wonderful, fragrant, magical remedy. This definitely doesn't need any added essential oils when you make your product. So let's see. Let's look at some other properties here. So Matthew would, oh yes, and then another thing that is magical about this resin is that it helps the bees. So the bees collect this resin, and they use it to help make what's called propolis, which is the patching that they use in their hives to keep them clean and to keep bacteria and critters and bugs from getting in and infecting and destroying the hive. And propolis, if you've heard of it, is a very potent medicine that we use from the bees when we can get it. We don't want to take too much from them because they need it to survive. But if you can get propolis, part of the reason it's so magic is because it has this poplar resin in it, and that's what the base of it is. In Native American Anishinaabe tradition, it was used to promote dreaming. And so it's for tissue states that need to be warmed and stimulated. And that's from Matthew Wood's Earthwise Herbal. Just a little note about that. So does anybody have any questions about gathering poplar buds, or the differences and similarities between that and cottonwood, or some story they want to tell about it?
Feel free to unmute if you'd like to add anything to the conversation. Jade said that they have a small cross made from the tree that's mentioned in the Bible.
Oh, neat. Wow, that must have some kind of energy when you hang on to it, huh?
I can
What
tell you
are
a little bit more about the propolis. I'm a beekeeper, and it is when they line their hive with the propolis, when they're exposed to a pathogen, then their individual immune system does not have to activate as much because it's kind of a communal um, uh, um, immune system. And they actually did some studies where they exposed bees to a particular pathogen, and then they tracked the bees and to look to see what kind of resin they brought back. And then later they exposed them to a different pathogen, and they went for a different kind of resin, and they re-exposed them to the first one, and they went back to the first tree for that kind of resin. So it's like their pharmacy. So it's really kind of cool.
That's very cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
What would be the difference in properties between cottonwood and the tree that you spoke of? Because I'm in New England and we have cottonwoods, but we don't have the other tree.
You know what? They're really similar. They are both part of the I'm not going to be able to say it now. Balsiferous is their first part of their name. It's that they're different subspecies. So their oils are very very similar in properties, and I think it probably varies from area to area, the same way that like the way some things will grow stronger if they're in dry soil versus moisture soil, and the way that they thrive. But the properties are very similar in terms of their antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, wound healing properties, and that stimulating dry. And the end of the cottonwood buds, they smell just as lovely and strong, and they're bigger. So one of the benefits of getting your resin from the cottonwoods is that you get more resin from the buds because they're just bigger and they have more resin.
Trish mentioned looking forward to getting to know my aspen and watching our bees.
Yes.
So if you're watching honeybees come in, they will carry the resin on their back legs, their hind legs, just like the same place that they carry pollen, but they're either carrying pollen or the resin, and you can tell when it's resin because it's all sticky and shiny.
It is very sticky. One of the things I've noticed is that when if you try and dry these buds, they don't hold on to the properties as well. They dry out and they lose that fragrance fairly quickly. I do keep a few dried from season to season just in case I need something with just a little bit of that power in there. You can also put them in the freezer. Put a little bit of your small container in the freezer, and you can retain that oily stickiness in that way. Once the leaf starts to get ready to develop and pop out, you're pretty much done for the year. So it is something you gotta kind of watch. I know lots of parts of the country are well ahead of us in the weather, and I'm sure there are places where they're already leafing out compared to here. So that's just something to consider. And if you've missed that timing in your area and you're looking to order them online, you want to look for that detail that they're not dried. And it's kind of interesting to see who's harvesting them and where you can get them fresh. Looking to those sustainable, smaller farmers probably is a good place to look. Is anybody foraging things like fiddleheads yet, or leeks or ramps in their areas?
Fiddleheads still haven't popped up yet. They're more very tight knuckles at the moment. The wild garlic is out, but we've yet to find any ramps. Been hunting for a couple of years and no luck so far.
Susan, where are you located?
New Hampshire.
Okay, so you're a little bit ahead of us there. Okay, yeah. So, I just wanted to share one more thing here with you from my seed starting. That's always fun. From Maggie.
There was one question going back to the buds. How do you collect the resin?
You pick the buds whole, and you know, you want to just pick like 1 or 2 buds from each little cluster. You don't want to pick the whole end off if you can help it. Sometimes they just come off in a clump, and then you just collect them. Bring your container that you're going to want to put the oil in, your jar or your tin or whatever, out there with you. Because if you try and collect them in a bag, they're going to stick all over the inside and you're going to lose some of the resin in there. So just bring whatever it is that you're going to put the oil right into with you out there, and you just fill your jar, and you're going to pour the oil over whatever you collect, just like you would cover herbs with alcohol if you were going to make a tincture. And then you're going to just slowly infuse that. And again, you can put that into a cupboard where it's slightly warm, not too hot, and just let it sit, you know, for months on end and let it do a slow thing. Or you can put it into a warm water bath. Again, really, if you're going to try and infuse oil in a crock pot, you want to make sure that it has a keep warm feature. If you put it in there on low, that's too hot. So, and then you just infuse that into the oil, and it's, you know, keep it covered. It smells wonderful until you feel like you've gotten all the properties that you want out of them, and then you strain them out and bring them back out to the earth. Okay, I want to show you this. I have another video. Where is my... Let's see. Here. Share screen. Down on this list, this one's already available for you. It was a class that I did for St. Louis County last year, and it's called Free Salad. And we're not going to watch it right now, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of a peek here. This has great pictures, and it's going to load up. It talks about fiddleheads, it talks about ramps, it talks about basswood leaves. And I can find it.
All right.
See if I can. The N intact. See, oftentimes when we're not assimilating our fats. And it goes through, and it's got really good pictures. And it's about, well, it's about 45 minutes long. But what I wanted to mention about it is that I have a really detailed handout that goes with it. So if you watch that video, you can email me and I'll send you the handout, and it goes through where to look for the things and what they look like, so you're making sure you're picking the right thing, and the time of season that you want to search for them. And most of it is about the spring, in the spring and early summer, edible greens and different things like that, safety precautions. And so it's many pages long. So I will share that with you if you like. And someone just asked a question about the fiddleheads being a specific type of fern, and they are. They're what we call the ostrich fern, and the ostrich fern is the ones that you see that are really big and tall. They grow in a rosette, so they're little curly fiddleheads as they're coming up grow in a little circle of usually seven to nine fronds that are going to uncurl and come up. And one of the differences about the ostrich fern that helps you to make sure that you're picking the right thing is that they have a very deep groove in their stem. A lot of fern species have a completely round stem like your finger, and a ostrich fern stem is grooved like a piece of celery. It's got a U shape, and that is a really specific detail to them. In addition to that, they grow in a rosette, and that the seed frond grows separately from the leafy fronds of the ostrich fern. Some ferns, the seeds are interspersed along the leafy stem, and those are ones that you don't want to eat. That one common one is called the interrupted fern, and that's because the seeds are interrupting the leaves as the plant is growing up. When you're foraging for fiddleheads, please be sustainable. You want to, usually if you find a patch of them, it's a decent sized patch and you're not going to have to worry about that. But you want to pick only 1 to 2 fronds or fiddleheads from each rosette as you go through the patch. And then you only really want to pick from their, one time each season, because you want to make sure that they can grow and seed out and come back for you next year. But you'll get enough. You'll get enough to have a nice meal with them or pickle them. They preserve well in that way. Fiddlehead ferns are really high in omega-3s and some other good essential oils. And off the top of my head, I'm not remembering what vitamins and minerals are in them, but they're really healthy. They taste a lot like asparagus, and that's how you also pick them. So if you've ever cleaned asparagus or picked asparagus and you want to break off that bottom that is a little bit thick or woody, you know how you kind of pull it across your finger and you bend it and it'll snap where it's supposed to? That's the way that you pick the ferns. You just start at the bottom, you kind of bend it over your finger, and you just pull it up, and right where it's going to snap for you is going to be a good length to pick. And you can pick them so they're about 3 to 4 inches long. That's a nice size stem with the curly top, and that makes a nice something to eat. And another thing to remember about the ferns is that you want to cook them. You don't really want to eat them raw. They can give you stomach ache, even the ones that are good for you to eat. And so you want to lightly saute them or steam them, or again, put them into a pickle or something like that to help them to break down and be more bioavailable for you.
There was a question about recommendation for natural sun protection and treating sunburn.
So the lotion that we made in the video was actually my sunscreen version. I call it Vital Skin. The herbs that are in there, not only, some of them have sun filtering abilities, and some of the other ones are just really good for skin health. But chaga is one that has some sunscreen protection. Chaparral is another. And avocado oil, just straight up avocado oil, has reported 30 SPF. And so that's something that you can just, get at the grocery store and incorporate into making your own salve or lotion, and use that just plain without the herbs. Other herbs that are good for, like, if you don't have that on in time, comfrey for sunburn is amazing. It is super soothing. It takes the heat out. It's really cooling and moistening, and it can help with the inflammation. And I have seen so many of my coworkers and friends and family like salvage vacation because they happen to have my comfort lotion with them and put it on when they got sunburned. And it really just is a game changer. And it'll even help your skin so much that you might not peel or blister. So I have a few friends that are really avid fishermen, and being out on the water in the sun and that extra reflection. And a couple of these guys, that's what they use when they get into trouble. So.
Awesome. That's all really wonderful information. And for folks that are not in the Duluth area, I think you can purchase Stacy's lotions and things off of her website, correct, Stacy?
Yep, you can just go on the website and send me like a message through there, or you can just email me directly and let me know what you're interested in, and we'll go from there. I don't have like a shopping cart and all that fancy automatic stuff on my website. You kind of have to actually talk to me, but sometimes that's not so bad.
Awesome. All right. Does anyone else have any other questions? I think we're pretty much near the end, right, Stacy?
Getting done here. Questions, comments, the recipe shares for fiddleheads?
You mentioned ramps. I actually took part in, oh, sorry, everybody, my screen's all over the place. I did a cooking class, a cooking segment for our PBS channel up here last year, doing a ramp recipe that was really good. It was kind of like a ramp muffin almost. So yeah, it was what was it, Gouda and ramps. So yeah, ramps are delicious. If you haven't had them, they are kind of a cross between garlic and onion. So they're delicious, and just about anything you would use that combination in.
Yes, and you can eat the whole thing, except for the stringy roots. They're much like a green onion in shape and use that way, and very, very good for you and easy. It's an easy one to practice foraging with. It's kind of an easy one to harvest. You just have to be careful to be sustainable there as well. The other thing to look for sooner than later is if you're in an area where you have basswood trees. The basswood leaves, when they come out in the spring, and they're little and shiny, and this is in that free salad video too, is that they make the best lettuce. They are just really succulent and juicy and sweet, and really easy to get a big bowl full of greens that you can then use as your salad base, and add your dandelions or whatever else you're picking your and very tasty and easy to gather.
Awesome. Okay, well, once again, I added my email address and our website information to the chat. So if you're interested in getting this recording or previous recordings, you can go ahead and shoot me an email and I will go ahead and send you what you're looking for. And you can check our website for other classes. Stacy's next class will be the final Tuesday of May, and then we have one more after that in June, I believe.
Yep. Yeah. So, yes, and those YouTube links will be available tomorrow. This is the one that's already on there. And if you have trouble finding it through YouTube, then just let me know and I'll send you the link.
Wonderful. And I did include Stacy's email address in the chat too. Yes, we can go ahead and do my email address one more time. Oops. There we go. Okay. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed tonight's class. I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Thank you again, Stacy, for what is always tons of wonderful information. So, and I encourage everybody to reach out to Stacy if you have questions that come up when you're in the midst of potentially making some of these recipes. I know that Stacy welcomes the chance to interact with you all. So,
yes, and just know that most of the time it's going to work out. And most of the time, if it doesn't seem like it's working out, there's a way to fix it. So just experiment and try.
Wonderful. Thank you again, everybody, for being here. Thank you for taking time out of your day, and have a wonderful rest of your evening or rest of your morning if you are still participating in Ireland.
Wow. No
Oh,
kidding.
Mary did ask one question. I saw it really quick. Where did it go? How long would the lotion last, and would you keep it in the fridge?
If you're going to keep it in the fridge, keep it in the door of the fridge, because if it gets too cold, it will tend to, split apart. And if you have a good, a cooler cupboard with, that's out of the light, it really does have with the grapeseed oil I've found, it has quite a long shelf life, like, months it can. But you'll know if it goes off, because it'll start to look a little, I don't know, dry and shiny on the top, and it's oil, so it will smell rancid once it's off, and you don't want to put that rancid oil. So, but it really does have a pretty good shelf life with what I have found in a cool space.
Terrific. Any other questions, everyone? All right. I think that's it. Thanks again, everyone. Thank you, Stacy, and have a wonderful